Popular Nemesis System wasn't coming together. Canceled the Wonder Woman game, apparently. Jordan Miller over VGC. According to Bloomberg's Jason Schreier, speaking on Kinda Funny Games Daily, the game, which was canceled alongside the closure of its developer, Monolith, faced multiple setbacks during development. It's also claimed that the most recent version of the game being worked on before at the studio was closed would have eliminated the Nemesis system and instead been more of a traditional action-adventure game akin to, well, God of War. Following the success of its 2 Lord of the Rings games, the studio was working on a new IP that would have expanded on the Nemesis system's procedural narrative. Quote, during this time, it's kind of clear to people at Warner Brothers that the game is not going to happen because people at Warner Brothers are not interested in new IP, end quote, said Schreier. In 2021, the original IP was canceled by Warner Brothers, which caused the entire leadership team at the studio to quit. That summer, the studio began working on Wonder Woman. The game would be announced later that year at the Game Awards with a short trailer, but basically showed off nothing, Michael.
Yeah.
Quote, Warner Brothers decided it's not interested in new IP and decides that Monolith are going to make a Wonder Woman game. And quote, there's your problem.
Yep.
Here's where lies the problem. Warner Brothers themselves made the decision, not the studio. This is the difference between a successful team and somebody who doesn't know how to really treat their teams, right?
Yep.
You take a look at Sony, the development teams over there, their studios, they work on what they want to make.
Mm-hmm.
And then it gets greenlit, and then it goes. If that game doesn't sound appealing to PlayStation, then they say no, go back to the drawing board, think of something else. Warner Brothers is like, you're going to make this. And this is why, instead of NetherRealms working on what should have been technically probably Injustice sequel or Injustice 3, we have Mortal Kombat because it's a bigger seller, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in tradition, they bounce back and forth between the two. So when all of a sudden they said, yeah, Mortal Kombat 1's coming out, I'm like, oh, that doesn't line up. So I think that's where it's at. This is where Warner Brothers is falling apart. Makes me nervous for the rest of that studio company over there in the future. Quote, the main thing that was rebooted, they were playing around with the idea that Wonder Woman would befriend people in the Nemesis system in reverse, where they would become your allies, and it wasn't coming together, end quote, the journalist said. Quote, they rebooted it to be more of a God of War style, more traditional action game. By then, it was kind of too late, end quote. A consultant on the game recently shared some details about the title might have been offered had it seen the light of day. Unfortunate, Michael. Here we go again. The Nemesis system rots and just whittles away to nothing.
And I think that's like the key thing, right? Where you're talking about with Warner Brothers, right? Were there people that wanted this game? Sure. But the only thing we've ever talked about this game was, and I've seen a lot of people talk about, right, is, man, RIP the Nemesis system, right? Oh, we're not going to get the Nemesis system, right? People were going to play this game because of the Nemesis system. They weren't going to play it because of Wonder Woman, right? And that right there should have been a red flag. As you said, Warner Brothers, we've talked about it every time we've talked about them, and it's been all bad news when we've talked about them. They have these basically 4 pillars of games that they're basically saying we need to focus on. And as you said, I think that's kind of pigeonholing them into games that I don't think people really want, right? Harry Potter Legacy, we're going to talk about it. Sure, all right, I get it. People probably want that. Mortal Kombat, sure, it's the Call of Duty fighting game. People will play it. DC hero games, like besides Batman,
Suicide Squad?
Yeah, I mean, Suicide Squad, Wonder Woman wasn't getting the hype. I mean, we haven't even had a good Batman game or a real Batman game in over a decade. I'll be curious to see when the Batman game that Rocksteady is allegedly working on, if it's even any good. And then Game of Thrones, which hasn't had a video game adaptation yet. I'm curious to see how that's going to work. I think, as you said, Drew, this is Warner Bros. Saying, well, this is where we think we can make the most money. Now you developers go out and make it, and they're not letting the developers make things they're actually passionate about. And so far, it's all whiffs for Warner Bros.
Yeah, no, absolutely. As a creative person in the industry, like, you got to let them shine. You can't just hold them back and direct them per se and say, hey, this is your next game. It doesn't work. And clearly it hasn't worked, right? Warner Brothers right now is suffering. When you have somebody who's passionate about the project, then everything comes together and it shines. You can see that, right? Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. Boom. One of the biggest successes this year. 2 million copies sold in 2 weeks. That's why. Why? Because people loved working on that project.
Yep.
You get to Warner Brothers, and like you saw Suicide Squad come out, and nobody wanted that. Nobody wanted it, and I'm sure there were a few there like, yeah, man, I can't look. Like I'm working on this game. I'm really pumped. Other people are like, this isn't gonna be what I wanted to work on. I have no interest in this, and it shows at the end of the day that Warner Brothers is geared towards, I just want everybody's money and less on the quality of the game, and it's suffering for Warner Brothers. This is why they're in the situation that they're in.